Hi, my name's Gary.
My name is Chris,
Welcome to Nerd Banter.
the show which is all things nerd. So, what are we talking about today?
Today we're just going to talk about why we're nerds. Pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. So we thought it would be a good idea, and we've been kind of discussing it over the last couple of months, of kind of give you a bit of an insight of kind of our backgrounds, or kind of our passions, and maybe why we're passionate about things. So and why we have been drawn to this type of culture, like, you know, and why essentially we've decided to make a YouTube channel to kind of dedicate it and celebrate the culture and everything to do with it, like. So we were discussing just before the show, kind of one of the first questions we were kind of going to ask each other. What's your kind of first memory of the kind of culture, or even I hate to kind of I'm going to try to not say nerd as much anymore. But like, what was your memories?
To be honest, it's popular culture now. It's not even a
Subculture.
separate entity now. It is popular. We're obviously going to be going back to when it was looked at as being a little bit different, not different in a bad way, but
niche.
Yeah, niche. I can pretty much pinpoint when I first really kind of found out that there was something outside of me getting a comic, which would have been the likes of the Beano or Dandy or Viz or likes of that. So it was pretty much comics that got me started into this. Not as like, it's the year after Batman was released. I loved Batman, but I only loved the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't have a background of the comics at the time. I knew that they existed, obviously.
How old were you?
I would have been 9, 8.
Showing your age.
So I knew that obviously Batman existed from reruns of the old kind of 60s TV show that were on, and I knew that there were comics out there, but I hadn't actually read any of them at the time. But so say excluding 1989 Batman, my parents, I don't know what they were thinking, but they got me a 2000 AD annual for Christmas one year. I would have been 9 when I got this thing, and literally one of the storylines, and I can picture it in my head. One of the storylines is Judge Dredd chasing down a perp and going into a silent disco. So everyone is wearing headphones. The music that has been playing is metal.
Yeah.
And as he's kind of trying to get through the crowds, what happens is the DJ gets knocked over. He hits the volume button on the desk, and everyone's heads start exploding. So I'm reading a comic, and my background is, as I said, Beano, Dandy, Viz, the likes of that.
Dennis the Menace.
Yeah, and suddenly I'm seeing that there are comics out there that
Violence.
have quite a lot of very gory violence in them.
Yeah.
Not so much nudity, but just kind of subversive thinking as well. Like a lot of the storylines. Like, I recently rebought that issue or the 1990 annual, and reread it, and it was just like, I know that 9-year-old me wasn't picking up on half the things that were actually being written about.
Oh no, not
so
the
much
slightest,
so much clever writing was going into 2000 AD at that time, and still is, obviously. Like, it does deal with the politics of the time and everything like that. So that was kind of the turning point, I think, because that was.
Did it have like a snowball effect on you? Like, did you go out after that and buy more 2000 AD comics?
I did look for the 2000 AD. They weren't very readily available, I'll be honest. Coming from a small town in Ireland, like, they're not going to be the norm in your local kind of newsagents. The newsagents would have still been kind of just kind of the normal, the Superman, maybe Batman, X-Men, the likes of that would have been stocked, and that would have been it. It is different now. Obviously, you can go into any Eason's and there might be 5 or 6 different 2000 AD comics available, and X amount of other comics. So it was kind of that got me started, and I know it would have been around that time as well that I would have got my first console. I got the Sega Mega Drive. I didn't have the Master System. I didn't have NES. Didn't have the Game Boy. So the Mega Drive would have been my first kind of gaming system.
So good.
I had my own TV in my room and everything, so I didn't have to worry about, like, I know a lot of people,
sunlight.
They literally had, like, their TV was in their living room. So if they wanted to play games, they had to wait until there was nobody else. I was lucky enough to have, I know it seems stupid now, everyone now has a TV in every room of the house, but
I think
at the time, having your own little portable 24-inch color TV was quite a thing.
Yeah, like most of my cousins and any friends that I had, like, oh my God, you've got a TV in your room and you've got a little console as well. I thought that was, like, for me, I didn't have a TV in my room till I was like my teenagers, and since maybe 15 or 16 when I worked like half a summer to spend like 120 quid on, you know what I mean, on a TV, like. So like your first console was the Mega Drive, like
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh,
came
so
with
good.
it. So yeah, like I wouldn't have even classified myself as a gamer then, though, because games were insanely expensive. Like, no matter how much you think games cost now, if you are going back as far as I am, games were still £60.
Punt, yeah.
So I don't know what the exchange is, but let's say it's the equivalent of about 80 to 90.
Well, you even look at the kind of, like, my first job when I was 13 or 14 was, I was on a punt an hour. So you do like 8 hours work, that's 8 punt. Do you know what I mean? So, like, yeah, they were, but definitely, I remember them definitely being between 40 and 60 punt.
Yeah.
It was crazy money.
No,
like.
it was definitely a case of birthday and Christmas. You got one game then, so you had to make sure that you knew the game that you wanted, which was another thing that I started getting into then as well, was buying the magazines about video games.
Yeah.
So I would sit there and I would literally reread them 5 or 6 times over, just poring over them, trying to decide what my next kind of purchase would be. And it's so different to how it is now. Like, we had to go to find a shop. We had to go to Dublin. None of the shops that I knew of in Drogheda at the time had new games. You might be able to rent games, but I can't remember being able to purchase them. I think I had to go to HMV in Dublin to be able to actually find the game that I wanted one year. Like,
we had like a Toys R Us in top of a Super Value, and they had behind the desk, behind the desk they had their PlayStation, Xbox, Sega Mega Drive games, and again, that was the only place in the whole county that you could buy games. Like, and then bit by bit you had your Extravision. You had eventually when Tesco's came to Monaghan, I know, big thing, you had your kind of your games there as well.
Yeah.
Like, but you're right, at the very years back, say 20 odd years back, they were, or 25 odd years back, they were, it wasn't readily available as well.
You might have been able to.
You had to go out searching for it. Like,
you might have been able to find maybe the top games but if you wanted something else, if you wanted something that wasn't in the top 5 games,
or a couple of years old, like,
you would have to go and like search them out. That was kind of my start off in the gaming. I went on to, I think I had an Xbox 360 for a while. I bought the Saturn like an idiot. I distinctly remember being in the shop and my mother saying to me, "Why don't you get the PlayStation 1? Everyone else is getting the PlayStation 1." Now, how she knew everyone else was getting the PlayStation 1, I don't know. But I was adamant, being a Sega, growing up on Sega.
Mommies talk to mommies.
Yeah, well, that could have been it as well. But growing up on Sega and kind of being the fanboy of all those characters, I was like, no, I want to stick with kind of what I know. So I did end up getting a Sega Saturn, and I think I had 3 or 4 games for it. And within, I think, a year and a half or 2 years, it was just
gone.
it was gone. Like, so I'm kind of still only catching up on PlayStation 1 games that everyone is talking about. Like, I still have my PlayStation 3, so I'm able to get a lot of the classic games. Like, I recently got Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is one of the games that everyone talks about as being a game that you need to play. Original Metal Gear Solids, the like of that. A lot of those are available now on the PlayStation 3 and things like that. So
Yeah.
I am slowly able to go back and play the games that I missed out on with not getting the PlayStation 1. So it was Sega Saturn, then Xbox 360. I think I lasted 6 months with the Xbox before I kind of decided that I wanted to start getting. I had started building my DVD collection over those couple of years as well. So I was buying DVDs, but then when Blu-ray came out, and I kind of discovered that the quality of the Blu-ray was something that I wanted, I decided I would trade in my Xbox 360, get the PlayStation 3, which is a Blu-ray player as well. So that was another kind of step. I stopped buying DVDs and started buying Blu-rays, and it was mostly like the movies that I would have been buying for Blu-ray quality would have been nerdy movies. They would have been the kind of sci-fi,
Blade Runner, and
the likes, the movies that you want to see all the quality,
glory.
all the quality on. It doesn't really matter if a movie that was shot in the 1970s is watched on DVD or Blu-ray. The quality isn't much different.
Your 35 millimeter kind of film, again, you're going to get good, decent enough quality out
even
of it. Even
the 80s. It was kind of only in the advent of movies getting better, like cameras getting better in the 90s and that.
Well, again,
and special effects as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, for me, my first kind of nerd memory was watching reruns of the 1960s Star Trek on, I think it was Channel 4 or BBC at the time in Ireland. And me and my dad would like have a routine every week where we would sit down and we'd watch. There was only 3 seasons of the original Star Trek, but it was like, our thing. We would have our dinner, 6 o'clock, Star Trek would come on, me and my dad would sit down. But then we'd have a discussion about the episode afterwards.
Okay.
And that went in when early 90s, when The Next Generation came out. That was like a big wow, because it was still set in the same universe, and it did pay homage to Gene Roddenberry's original work in the 60s. It had a very progressive themes, as in, equality and kind of this utopian kind of, optimistic outlook on where humanity can kind of bring themselves forth. And then I fell in love with The Next Generation. I always loved the original 60s as well. I loved the original Batman 60s. This was when the reruns, when I was a kid. I was like 4, 5, 6, but they were so campy. You had your villains of the week.
Yeah.
It was still Batman, but
it was colourful. It was more cartoony,
campy, But again, even rewatching some of the episodes now, it was really tight, funny kind of writing. It was so on the ball. It was for, like, as an adult, I can actually enjoy the episodes from a kind of nostalgic kind of perspective. But as a kid, I was like, oh, Batman and Robin, superheroes, alter egos, kind of, the Romero, the original kind of Joker with his painted over mustache. Because he refused he refused to get rid of it. It kind of elicits so many memories. I'm going to give you a laugh. My first ever proper adult comic was a 1990 annual of 2000 AD Rogue Trooper.
Okay. So 1990 was a seminal year.
Yes, it was. I was just like giggling away to myself, going, I need to tell him.
Yeah.
A cousin of mine, a good few years ago, could have been in the mid-90s. I think he had it for about 4 or 5, maybe 6 years. Again, I was probably 9, 10, 11, 12. And and I remember I was at his house and he gave me this comic, and then my parents didn't. They were like, oh, whatever, it's a comic, it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember just like the violence, the really out there storytelling. I went through like articles of the making or the history of the Jedi, the Star Wars, Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
And how it was made, and you know, went to different articles and that, but the artwork as well, which I was completely memorized by. And I think anything after that was kind of just a development of a progressive of those kind of memories. Like me and my dad will still go and see the new Star Wars film. We'll go and see, you know, Marvel films together. Or I really kind of, that's still our thing. Or if he goes and sees a film or watches a new, say a sci-fi channel or TV show, we'll always kind of go, did you see this? And we'll have that kind of over the water cooler kind of interaction between each other. Definitely my dad has kind of formed my kind of interest for that. With regards to gaming, my first console was the PlayStation 1. Now, it was literally within about 6 months after it was released, and the Mega Drive was still very in at the moment. It was still a popular console. A lot of kids were still buying it. I remember going on to Toys R Us or wherever, that Toy Master above Super Value, walking up the stairs with my confirmation, Holy Communion or confirmation? Oh my God, I think it was Holy Communion money. Yeah, and buying Ace Combat for the PlayStation 1, and then you're having your standard demo disc on the PlayStation 1, which had
Tomb Raider.
Oh, could have had Tomb Raider. It had Die Hard Trilogy.
Oh yeah.
And it had the first level of each single, because it was 3 different types of games on one disc. You had the light gun, you had the Nakatomi building,
Alien?
and you had the driving.
Did it have an alien?
Didn't have the alien.
Okay.
I just remember because that's the only. I remember playing that for about 3 months, 4 months.
Just the demo disc.
Just the demo disc. Like, you know, Ace Combat was fun, and I finished it, and that was grand. But I remember playing that just over and over again.
Those Die Hard games were.
And there was like 4 to 5 months between my birthday and between my Holy Communion, and I remember just playing it to death, and then eventually getting that disc of that kind of I still remember the cover art on it with the explosion in the background. I got the Predator. I got the Predator gun, the light gun from Judge Dredd, with the light go up on the side of it.
Lawgiver.
The Lawgiver, and the recoil on it as well.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would actually pay good money to play that again. It was such a solid game.
Yeah.
Like the Nakatomi building was okay, but the light gun game was fantastic. And then the Die Hard one set in New York.
The driving through Central Park in a taxi.
Yeah, and I remember just running over people, and blood splatter would go on the screen, and then the window wipers. Now, looking back on the graphics now, it does not hold up, because it's not true 3D. They're actually 2D figures that mold themselves towards the camera, so they're not. It's not the figures in it.
I know what you mean, like the old Wolfenstein. They
exactly,
turn as you turn, so that you're always looking at one angle of them.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my God, it did not age well at all. But again, you had guns, you had violence, you had light gun games, you had 3 games in one. Again, like getting into comics, that what you were talking about, like I literally had that Rogue Trooper up until my late teens and until my early 20s. I tried getting into it a little bit. It was like in rural Ireland, you had Easons, but you didn't have like graphic novels. You had your one issues, or you go in and buy a comic, and then you're just like, I have no idea where I'm starting here or finishing. And it was, it was. The internet as well was in early stages. You didn't have a huge amount of resources as well. The only place you could go to is Forbidden Planet and a couple of comic book stores down in Dublin. But that would mean, like, for someone who's in their 14, 15, really the only kind of subculture at that time was anything that was on TV or the movies that were coming out at the time, the science fiction movies, and it was hard to kind of. So I definitely gravitated towards gaming. I was definitely a gamer, like.
Yeah.
And then eventually, when I went into college and built my very first PC, and then I was starting bit by bit drabs of getting exposed to graphic novels. I didn't read, like, Watchmen was the first proper graphic novel a mate of mine, Justin, gave it to me when I was working in an insurance company. He says, read that. And I think it took me, like, with family life and everything, it took me like a week to read. But it was Watchmen, and it just exploded my kind of perception on adult storytelling for this kind of medium. And it just blew my mind, and it's snowballed into an addiction then after that.
Well, I think Alan Moore is going to be most people's kind of realization that comic books aren't all
it's not for kids,
bang pow.
No, it's not.
So the likes of him, Neil Gaiman, like if you think about it, a lot of these guys, like going back to where we started off, a lot of these guys started off in 2000 AD as well, and got completely, like, picked and taken over to America, and that's where they kind of, their names got
Vertigo, DC's Vertigo
and DC and the likes of that. So, like, the likes of Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman,
Gareth
Ennis, all these guys kind of started off the same way we did as well, and gradually got kind of the notice that they weren't getting in 2000 AD. I don't know if you've seen, there's a documentary about...
I did.
Yeah, there's a documentary. Not too sure if it's on Netflix at the moment.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, so there you go. But it basically goes through the fact that as soon as an artist was finished with their work, the artist no longer owned their work. One of the saddest things I was hearing...
They didn't even get, like, acknowledgement on the actual books themselves. Like, it was crazy, that kind of stuck in the past kind of culture that the artist didn't need to recognize that kind of... It was the artwork, like, you know what I mean?
They speak about there being a flood in the offices, and they found out that they were, like, their artwork was being used to soak up the water. And, like, this is art that... It is art. Like, if you look at some of the artwork in the 2000 AD comics and things like that, I still think it outshines a lot of the work that's going into the likes of the X-Men. That's going to start an argument, I know, but say the likes of Superman, X-Men.
Well, they're completely different styles of artwork.
There's so much detail in 2000 AD comics, and some of that has transferred over to the larger comics. Transmetropolitan is probably one of the most detailed, intricate comics you will ever read as well as look at. Like, it's one of these ones where you'll look at a page, you'll read what's going on in the page, and then you will spend 15 minutes looking at what is actually going on in the background of almost every scene in that comic.
Every panel,
yeah.
It's a beautiful comic. It is absolutely stunning.
It's amazing.
I remember one of the... I'm a big fan of Mark Millar. I from the fact that, like, before going to that point, those guys saved DC Comics and Marvel. When they brought over, it completely changed how storytelling was told for those lines. And from Marvel almost going bust in the late 80s and selling off all their properties to all the movie studios and stuff, and to kind of garner funds to kind of keep them afloat, taking in new blood and taking in guys who had a completely different perspective, completely different eyes, weren't kind of bogged down by the industry that a lot of the storytellers at the time in the late 80s were. It was a massive fresh approach. Very simply, Mark Millar came into and did the Ultimates in X-Men Ultimates. Yeah. And
he did again, Fantastic Four as well.
Fantastic Four, and then the Ultimates then, as in the Avengers. I remember the artwork for, and this is obviously early 2000s, like, you know what I mean? He'd been working over in America for the guts of maybe, or doing it at work for years. But I remember when we just talk about artwork, the Ultimates, I don't know if it was moving on to a digital kind of format. It probably was. But I remember just going through it, just going, oh my God, this is just beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
A great, fun, action-packed story. Different type of movie stylistic kind of approach to the Avengers that they were never done before, or it was definitely a different approach. Like, and then just going, I'm just hooked on this artist, and especially now with all his own Millarworld work that he has done. Did you hear the news with regards to Millarworld?
It was picked up by Netflix, yeah.
Oh, so they own all. Well, they don't own, but they own their distribution rights. So they're going to be creating all his kind of characters,
TV shows based on
his work. Like, yeah.
Also, I don't know when this video is going to post up, so I don't know how recent the news is as well. But The Boys was picked up as well as a TV show.
For where? With Gareth Ennis?
Yeah, and I'm fairly sure it's HBO or someone like that. Someone that will actually do justice to that comic book. Because I don't know if you haven't read The Boys, read The Boys. It's probably one of the most disturbing comics and also one of the funniest. If Simon Pegg isn't involved, something
I don't
is
want to
wrong.
know.
Basically, one of the characters visually is based on Simon Pegg, although he is Scottish. So in the comic book, he's Scottish. So Simon Pegg will have to do an accent, but please get Simon Pegg.
Yeah. Okay. So let's. Okay. So name 3 comics that you need to read if you haven't read any comics. And that's so difficult to do. I've literally picked 3 in my brain.
Well,
so
you've
far.
already named Watchmen, which is probably
you have to.
Most people's.
That's the same. That's in my top 3 as well. You have to. If you haven't read any comic books or graphic novels, and it's something you're interested in, just read that.
Yeah. I'm a huge Batman fan, and I would imagine that it's going to be either The Long Halloween or Death in the Family.
Oh wow, yeah, with the
death of Jason Todd.
Jason Todd. Wow,
that was like, I'm not sure about the timelines, whether it came out before the death and return of Superman, but that was one of the biggest things to happen in comics.
Did they have a poll or kind of competition?
I think they had a poll to see
if he was going to live or die.
To tell if you wanted to have Jason Todd survive, you had to literally write in. This was before email. You had to write in to DC and vote, basically, as to whether or not you wanted Jason Todd to survive or not. So we might never have had the Red Hood or the characters that Jason Todd became after that if the public audience had decided that.
But they didn't like
survive.
Jason Todd. He was disobedient. He was a little shithead, pretty much. And he wasn't. So, like, when that came out, it was an overwhelming response to say, kill him. But when I remember it,
it's one of the most evil Jokers you'll ever read. Like, Joker
was it with
usually,
a crowbar, wasn't it?
With a crowbar. And an explosion.
And an explosion afterwards,
Not just the crowbar. He blew up
the
warehouse that Todd was in as well. So that would be one. I'm trying not to just pick all Batman. So I'm going to pick Death in the Family there as one. Wolverine Origins. If you're a fan of the X-Men and you're a fan of, which most people are a fan of Wolverine, finding out where Wolverine came from was one of the most kind of interesting. It didn't spoil anything for me. It's not one of these ones. It's not like the new Alien movies where I'm hearing things that I don't need to hear about. This was telling me stuff that I actually wanted to find out about. So Wolverine Origins would be one as well. And
that's your 3.
I think, Death in the Family is one. I'm not going to say Long Halloween. And I think the Sin City comics.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
Sin City comics are great. Now, they're not all great, but say out of I think there's 7 altogether, I would say 5 of them are great.
Really? I didn't even know.
And the other 3,
there were 7 of them, like volumes, like.
Volumes.
Really?
I think the first movie is based on the first.
The first volume?
Is it just the first volume?
I think it's the first volume, because I've read Sin City and it's. Yeah. I think it is.
But I have all. I think I'm fairly sure there's 6 or 7 of them anyway.
Wow,
and as I said, not all 7 of them are fantastic, but 5 out of the 7 are great, and the other 2 are just good.
Yeah.
But it's still good.
Good.
Yeah, it's not.
I would go for Preacher. Oh, again, Gareth Ennis, writer of The Boys. Gareth Ennis is a Belfast man, by the way, if you don't already know that. He is a bit, he doesn't, he's never in the spotlight. He doesn't like kind of showing his face, even in comic conventions, a huge amount anymore.
In
like
an interview,
I have seen like old interviews from years back talking about The Boys, but he doesn't do a lot of, I think his name speaks for itself. Preacher is, again, so much fun out there. If you've watched the TV show, that's fine. It's not going to, the two stories don't match up at all. They're not similar in the slightest.
I haven't watched season 2 yet, so I don't know, but season 1, definitely not.
You have similar characters.
The characters are
similar, but
there,
that's it.
But the story is different,
I've already said Watchmen. Again, one of the most... I was thinking about what you were saying. If we're going to go for Wolverine, there was Mark Millar, Enemy of the State, Wolverine storyline by Mark Millar.
Yeah.
It just has Wolverine, has Elektra, it has the Hand. It has... it's just a great story. It's just done by Mark Millar, so it's a lot of action-packed. And, it's quite a fun... especially if you're into the Defenders at the moment, it's just nice to have the Defenders and Elektra in it.
Okay,
all kind of fighting off against each other. The Boys is a good one.
I'm just annoyed that you said 3 and not 5 or 10, because I could probably rift off another.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you could. we could.
I know. As soon as I walk out from here today, I'm going to be like,
"What was I thinking?
Why didn't I pick this and why didn't I pick that?" But those are probably the ones I picked are probably the ones that I've reread the most.
Same here. Yeah. I would reread Preacher at least once a year, or once every, say, 16 months, because it's just such an easy read and so much fun.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with The Walking Dead, and again, I read, I think 18 volumes before, or up to about 16 volumes before the show came out. And it was a real fun read, and it was really good storytelling. Now, it's a bit melodramatic in the books, and again, the TV shows like that. But, it was one of these things that it's like, at the time when I was reading it, I was really invested in these characters. And when, for example, when there's certain big deaths, especially in around the prison, and they're a lot more grittier in the in your face in the actual comics. They're a tiny bit toned down.
I've read the first 3. I think that's as far as I got.
They're not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, I really kind of related to, and it was not related to, but I really got involved with the storytelling. And again, I would literally just pick up a volume and read it within 2 hours and just go, this is amazing. I need to get the next one,
Yeah.
And I no other kind of run has ever kind of had that effect. So it was Wolverine, it was Preacher, and it was The Walking Dead. I think, art-wise as well, it's a black and white. It's very, very minimalistic. It's not in your face.
That was one thing I was going to say. I did like the fact that it kind of went against convention by being black and white.
Yeah.
And it really worked for that, because I'm not a huge fan of the whole zombie thing anyway, but I would have thought that if it was just zombie gore, I don't think I would have even gotten as far as the third.
It's 2 in your face.
Yeah, I would have probably given up after the first issue.
I think they did like a special like mini comic attached just in color, where there's like aliens come down, and it was just kind of like what if kind of take the piss story with Rick and all the same characters, but it was in color. There's a lot I do want to read, and I can't wait. There's like Why the Last Man I want to get into.
It's supposed to... I don't want to spoil anything. I haven't read it myself, but it's supposed to be one of these ones that kind of peters out at the end, which was my main...
Oh, no.
I've read The Preacher as well. I really didn't find that ending good.
Really?
Yeah, I was a little bit kind of let down by the ending of Preacher, which hasn't stopped me. I think I've read it through 4 or 5 times, and there's 9 graphic novels in the collection. So the ending hasn't really affected me, but I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't what I kind of had hoped for the ending of it. I think I've heard the same thing to have been said about Why the Last Man. A little bit of a... I keep going back to Batman here. If you have issues with the third Christopher Nolan Batman movie, read Nightfall, because if you do what I did and just read that comic book but imagine it in the Christopher Nolan world, now not all elements of it, there are a few things that are only doable in a comic book. There's one guy that controls a hawk and stuff like that.
Okay.
I don't think that would have worked in the Christopher Nolan
Not really
universe.
realistic, no.
But if you want a good Bane story, those 3 comics are
Brilliant.
pretty good. Yeah, I'm gonna stop because if I'm just gonna keep listing things now. So
okay, so let's change the subject a little bit before we finish off. With regards, what is important to you with regards to the things that you like? What attracts you to, say, a certain type of show, a certain type of comic, a certain type of movie? What's something that really grabs your attention going, I really like that, or kind of resonates with you?
When you were talking about watching Star Trek with your dad, I had a similar thing with Quantum Leap. Me and my dad would, regardless of what either of us were doing, Tuesday evening on BBC Two, Quantum Leap was on. It didn't matter. We would make sure that we were both there to watch Quantum Leap. So that was, I never got into Star Trek or anything like that. So that was my first major kind of TV show that dealt with sci-fi elements. I know it was mostly about
the story
and what Sam was doing in the episode, but it did have the time travel element. It did have Al, isn't it?
I think it's Al.
Walking in out of a door that disappeared and all that kind of stuff. And it was also the one of the main things that got me more into Stephen King books as well, because there's one episode, I think it was aired around Halloween, where Stephen King is a character in the storyline.
Really?
Yeah. He's not named throughout the entire episode, and it's when his mother's calling him in that she goes, Stevie, and Mrs. King is her name, and it's like you put it together, and the things that are happening in the episode are elements of Stephen King stories. Yeah. So I would have probably started reading Stephen King books around then, which led me to reading The Dark Tower, which is probably the nerdiest of his books.
It's so good.
So
Have you seen the new movie?
No, I'm not going to watch the new movie.
I don't think I can either.
I don't want to. I don't want to ruin it. I've read a few of the Marvel comics though, and they're very good.
I've read one.
The ones that are based on young Roland.
Yeah.
They're pretty good. But yeah,
what's attracted to you
what
even
makes
now?
Me want? I think TV wise, it would be visuals and sound. I think Brian Fuller. When I watched Hannibal is now my favorite, probably my favorite TV show of all time, and it has something to do with the actors, it has something to do with the storyline, but it has a hell of a lot to do with the visuals and the sound in that show. Now that he has moved on to American Gods, I don't know if you're watching that, but American Gods is phenomenal as well, and it has a lot to do with that as well. He has a look and
a style, absolutely.
The style that he has is, I'm going to follow his career. I'm going to watch everything.
You're a
that
lifer.
He does.
You're Brian Fuller lifer now.
And he was he was showrunner on the new Star Trek show until they pulled him off it as well. And
Discovery?
Whatever the new one that's coming out.
Yeah, Discovery. Yeah,
he was the
He's
showrunner.
Been pulled off
he was
it.
pulled off it. Yeah, he's no longer the showrunner, and that would have been my impetus to actually start watching Star Trek if I knew that Brian Fuller was doing a Star Trek show.
Do you know why he was pulled off it?
Artistic differences, I don't know. But,
from Hannibal to Star Trek.
I can't imagine a Star Trek universe that would have the dark imagery that runs through all of the stuff that he's done so far. I'm praying. I'm trying to remember now in my head whether it's true or not. I'm fairly sure Good Omens is going to be done by him. I know
Really?
they've cast the two main actors. It's David Tennant and
Good.
what is it? Martin Freeman. Not Martin Freeman. Martin. He was in the Underworld movies. Martin Campbell. Martin Campbell is going to be.
I don't know. I just can't visualize him. Yeah.
He was. I'm trying to think of other things he was in. He was in. No, I can't think.
Gone.
But Martin Campbell's his name anyway.
Cool.
But they are playing. I know they've cast those two guys as the angel and demon. But if Brian Fuller is involved in that TV show, that is just gonna
Yeah.
he is the perfect person to do something like that because it's dealing with heaven and hell and all this kind of stuff.
What's the like for this coming obviously September October season for TV? What's the most? Are you anticipating most? What are you looking forward to the most?
There's a couple of Stephen King things. Like I've seen it recently. Recommend it. It's phenomenal. If you've read the book, it does deviate from the book, but
There's no orgy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Stephen King in the 1980s plus cocaine is the reason that the orgy is in
lots
that
of
book.
alcohol. Yeah.
Like if you've ever seen Maximum Overdrive, a movie that Stephen King directed, there's a little. You'll understand what I'm saying. Stephen King is all over this kind of Halloween season. Mr. Mercedes is coming out as a TV show.
Okay.
It's probably one of the best Stephen King books that I've read in a while.
Yeah.
It's a really dark story. I really hope they don't change anything in it because it deserves to be told as it's in the book. There's a TV show called Castle Rock that's coming out that's going to be basically the Marvel universe but Stephen King. It's a town where I don't know if you've read a lot of Stephen King.
I've read I haven't read everything. I've read Pet Sematary, Salem's Lot. I've read probably about. I've read all of The Dark Tower, which was his magnum opus. But
that was
phenomenal.
his Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Even though it's actually longer than Lord of the Rings.
I've read a good bit, but I keep on finding out that there's more amazing books that I haven't read, so I must get around to them.
Well, basically, I would say 80-90% of Stephen King's stories take place in and around one town in Maine. This is Castle Rock is the name of the TV show, so it's going to be basically the Stephen King universe all taking place. So you will have a house on a hill called Salem's Lot. You will have a little shop called Needful Things. The library from it is going to be there. The standpipe from it is going to be there. Dolores Claiborne, I think, takes place there as well. So that's just going to be, as long as they do it right.
It's a mishmash of all different stories kind of thing? Or
Elements. It's probably going to have its own storyline, but you're going to have characters, say, or little Easter eggs from all of Stephen King's stuff in there. And then not so much Stephen King, but inspired by, let's say, season 2 of Stranger Things.
Oh, God,
is released in time for Halloween.
It's a month and a half away now for it to come out, and I'm just counting the minutes. I've never been so nerdily excited about a TV show. I completely forgot about that. For me, it's going to be. I'm inquisitive of the new Star Trek. I don't have my hopes up too high, but again, if I'm surprised, more the better. I love all the DC. I love the Arrow. Listen, for all its faults. The way Arrow has gone downhill recently, I don't think it got any better after second season or third season. Right. I think that was the pinnacle of it. Flash for me is amazing. I love it. Supergirl last season got better, but I was really disappointed with the season finale. I think the fight on top of Rooftop was shit.
Right.
Really, it was just crap. You could tell that they just ran out of money for it. To be honest with you. I like the whole kind of interchangeable characters making cameos and their team up episodes, mini Avengers. What they're doing is good storytelling. It's good fun, and I can sit down with my kids at the weekend, try my best not to watch them, and then just sit down with my kids and watch all those programs. And they're all suitable, and they all get excited, and we all can talk afterwards. Yeah. Doctor Who, I'm looking forward to the female Doctor when the Christmas special comes out later on this year. But yeah, that's it. I think that's pretty much us. I think will definitely have like an episode like this cut in every couple of episodes. It's again, it's just going to be us chatting about the things that we love. And at again, like it is nerd banter. It is the epitome of nerd banter. Is a celebration of the culture, what we love, and getting different people to come in and talking about different things that we may not know about. So listen, you happy out?
Absolutely.
Folks, thanks for watching again this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. Please don't forget to, if you haven't done already, is like and subscribe this video. Hit that little bell button to get notifications anytime you see, anytime we publish a video. And we will see you again next week.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Bye now.
Bye-bye.